Harry Maharaj, for people who lived in a bygone era, you could be described as the ultimate plonker, right? So you you left a good pensionable paying job to go back to the family business where there was damn all money and very little prospect. So for that, you could be rightfully labeled an absolute plonker. But for those of us in the know, and those of us who know a little bit better, it was a master move. So we're going to hear all about that in a very short space of time. But first, A, you're very welcome to Just Getting Started. And B, we've got to start with your surname, Harry Maharaj, because it's hardly a typical Irish surname, is it?
No, definitely not a typical Irish name. Well, thanks for having me on, Nikki, and for the intro. That's we'll go with that one and see if it turns out to be masterful or not. But yeah, no, the Maharaj surname is basically, it's originally Indian. But my granddad was born in South Africa, so my great grandparents were Indian. Moved to South Africa, like a lot of Indians did during that time, down to Durban. And then my granddad was moved to Ireland and studied medicine. And he was in the Royal College of Surgeons, became an orthopedic surgeon as well, so kind of at the very top of his field, and married an Irish woman and settled in Dublin initially, and then moved down to Kilkenny. And would be still to this day, we would have people coming up to us even in the yard now and saying, wow, your granddad operated on me when I was 10 or 12 and he saved my leg, or he did some pretty remarkable surgeries back in the day which weren't common back then, and quite breakthrough stuff. So yeah, the Maharaj surname is a little bit different. And as I always joke, my other brother who's in the business with us, Connor, Connor is a white skin, red hair, as Irish as it comes, and so the Irish genes came through strong on that front.
Yeah, I like the way you just casually dropped in there that the Maharaj family, some of them went to South Africa and some of them went to Ireland. So we're talking when, the late 1800s, is that right? Or even, no, probably mid 1900s, was it?
Yeah, like my granddad came over here, I think it was probably through the 50s. I think is when he moved over studying, and then settled down and had kids and whatever else. And,
okay, So I get the South Africa piece. That was easy because there's a huge Indian population in South Africa.
Yeah.
Going back a couple of centuries, and then the Irish piece. So Ireland was obviously Trinity College. So Trinity College was obviously recognized as one of the leading universities for medical students,
right? The Royal College of Surgeons. Yeah. So so there would have actually been, he came over with, I think, 7 or 8 friends who they would have kind of grown up together, and then the aim was to come over here and to study medicine, and they all actually married Irish women, which at the time was was very different as well. Like, you think of Ireland back in those days, it was a very different place, and like you can look at me here and I look as Irish as it comes, but my granddad was very black and very dark, so it's amazing over the generation. So they came over. It was a crew of them, and extremely, well, he was anyway, I don't know, I'm assuming the others were as well, extremely intelligent, and did some great groundbreaking things in his industry as well over time. But it's just remarkable to see it was a big shift, like back in that day, to leave South Africa and move to Ireland as well. We travel so easily these days and we just take it as normal, but back then it would have been a big trek.
Yeah. Well, we're about to find out very shortly if that intelligence was passed down through the generations.
Or still that longer.
Or did it end some other? But I'm absolutely fascinated by this move to Ireland. So I wonder, did they move to Ireland to study, and I get that. But did they move with the intention of staying overseas, or did they move with the intention of bringing their newfound skills back to India? What part of India was it, and do you still have roots, and do you still have connections there?
Yeah, there's still connections on the South Africa side of things. So like my dad say, would still have a lot of cousins and stuff there. Unfortunately, kind of the generation above, most of them have all passed away, and but he'd still have cousins out there who he'd be communicating with. And no, I think the original plan was, like, look, South Africa was a difficult place back in those days as well. So there was probably just you know, an escapism to it as well, maybe, to kind of go and let's see what's there. But obviously the Irish medical side of things obviously must have had a reputation if it was pulling people from that far away to come over. And then I could say, from what I've heard, it was they got here and the way of life was great and they were, you know, integrated quite well. Obviously, Ireland was a different place then, and it's probably got better and better in terms of mixes of races and everything like that. But when they came over, you know, they had a skill set that they were able to bring. So I think in particular when he moved down from Dublin and came down to Kilkenny, and actually the site where our business even is at the old Woolen Mills, that's where he bought and became the family home where the business still is now. And it's right down on the River Nore. There's about 12 acres of space there, you know, running along it. And he bought it because it actually reminded him of home. And that's why he kind of bought it, 'cause it's quite secluded. And he just became a major member in Kilkenny society. And the fact that people are coming up to me now and still saying it, you know, 30, 40 years later, like he passed away in 94, I think is what it was, you know, so he's gone a long time and there's still people talking about the work that he would have done and some of his friends would have done if they'd have known them. So it's, it's remarkable.
So do you identify your heritage as being South African or being Indian?
Well, it would be technically, I can actually hold. I could hold a South African passport, still based in a quarter, because I think it goes off of your grandparents, and so no, that's where we would kind of hold it to. I think that's what we would typically say. It would be a South African,
Yeah. And which part of India were the family from originally?
I'm not actually even really sure on the full history of that side of it, and that's probably a question I need to ask. It's one of those things, you know, you just take it for granted, the conversations, but yeah, it's something I probably need to dive a bit deeper. It'd be an interesting kind of family tree to kind of go back on that side and see. Because see, the Maharaj surname would stem from kind of the Indian word king, is what that word.
Correct. You know, that's why I'm interested.
So it would be funny. I'd often meet somebody now who maybe would be an Indian or something like that. If, you know, you're just out and about or in business and people say Maharaj, oh really? And they're like, you know what that means? And I was like, oh yeah, no, I know it comes from king. So, you know, maybe there's a fortune somewhere hidden in the past, maybe, but not that I've heard of anyway.
Yeah. And then just to kind of close out this little piece of heritage, the move from Dublin to Kilkenny. So we're going back to the 1970s, something like that.
70s,
yeah. And so Kilkenny General Hospital, was it that he came, or was that he associated with that, or how did that happen?
He came down and he would have been, so there would have been Kilcreen and Audit hospitals, which would be kind of two of the other hospitals that were here. But he essentially, and Kilkenny Hospital, the main St. Luke's Hospital, he'd have been kind of given the qualifications he had and his skill set and becoming an orthopedic surgeon, obviously, he would have been basically wherever he was needed. And then he would have also been traveling around the country. He'd have been spending a lot of time up in Dublin, coming up to do surgeries for people. You know, like it's amazing. Like I was years ago, I was actually playing I was younger. I was only probably 17 or 18, playing in the tennis club in Kilkenny. And it was one of these American tournaments where, you know, you're paired up with just random people. And I was with this older lady and we were playing, and then she kind of clocked the name and she started getting quite emotional. And I was kind of, God, my tennis isn't that bad. You know, I'll try not double fault too many times. And no, she said, no, she was like, I assume it wasn't your dad because of your age. I'm assuming it was your granddad. Basically saved me, and I was told I'd never walk again. And they were coming in and they were looking to amputate one of her legs. Whoever was in charge on the night was saying, no, this leg has to come off after an accident. He was called in to consult on it, and he ended up taking some bones from other parts of her bodies, was able to do some major repair work. And here she is 30 years later playing a game of tennis with that man's grandson, you know, like and like, you know, I came home and I was telling my parents at the time, and like, it was a wow moment for that. To hear that story and to kind of see it in person. But so no, it is really interesting, and just delving into it a little bit further. So let's take 100 surgeons, right? So I'm presuming, and this is no disrespect to any surgeon out there, but I'm presuming that there are 95% of surgeons go through their daily business and do the job. And it's the same with any other profession as well. And then there's always the 1% or the 5% who
who actually really give a shit, right? And who really are kind of entrepreneurial, or they put an extra 5% in because they are totally invested and they really want to, and they want to go that extra mile. He was clearly one of those people, was he?
Yeah, he was one of those people. And then he was also obviously in that industry. Like, we can talk about business and it's easy to take a chance and take a risk, because in reality nobody's life is on the hook. But in their world, you know, if you're trying something new or something that hasn't been done before, there's real risks associated with it, you know. But that's the type of person who can change somebody's life for the better. And yeah, everything I've heard based on what he's achieved and what he did was that he had the intellect to be able to do it and come up with new creative and innovative ways, but also cared and was willing to go that extra mile and maybe take that chance on. So yeah.
And was that innovation and that willing to go the extra mile? I'm getting a sense that was passed down through the ages. So did your parents, did your dad inherit that from your grandfather?
Yeah, well, nobody went into medicine anyway, so that's maybe the starting point of it. But no, I suspect that in particular from that kind of South African Indian culture, something that I've definitely picked up. Family is huge. It's all about the family. You know, it goes back to obviously generational, and where it's everyone sitting around having dinner together. That's a very, like, we do it here, but obviously with where society is going, that's getting harder and harder for people to be able to do. You know, families don't even get to sit down every night anymore because, you know, both parents are out working, different shifts, the way the world works. Whereas that's something I've definitely picked up from that my dad would have taken from that, which was like, family is core. That's the most important thing that there is. And but then obviously there is an entrepreneurial aspect to what he brought to his field. And then my dad obviously brought that by setting up our family business. And then as sons, we've kind of gone through in the next generation of that. But it's quite nice that we're still all doing it on the site that my grandparents bought, you know, 60 years ago. That's
I've got geography. I've got Irish geography lessons etched into my brain forever. The rivers Barrow, Nure, and the Suir are the three rivers in that kind of confluence down that part of the country. So you're on the banks of the Nure. Yeah. And where did the name of that come from? There's obviously a connection. What's the Nure? Was it Queen Nure, or was it?
Yeah, I actually don't know on the Nore. Well, like we're at the old woolen mills. That's where we are, which goes back to the site originally being a woolen mills back in the 1900s. But on the north side of it, I'm not actually sure.
Yeah. So paint the picture for now. And we are going to go into this in your involvement in your family business in just a few minutes.
Yeah.
But I'd like you to go back to the origins of that business, back to the 1980s or wherever it was, and it was your dad. And so what did it look like? Because they weren't exactly fabulous economic times for anybody in this country. So tell us about the origins.
Yeah, so it was through the 90s when Dad set it up. So my parents had actually moved to the UK and had lived there. That's where we were born there, myself and my brothers. They'd lived there for nearly 20 years. And Dad was working in the financial services industry. He was in the pension world, working with Legal & General. And he kind of had always had a little bit of a bug about the world of salvage. You know, our family home that was there, he had bought, and he'll say it wasn't derelict. My mother will say it wasn't. It was pretty much derelict, and they did it up from scratch. And that was kind of through the 80s, say. And but at the time, Dad would talk about stories where you could literally walk down a road, and there was so much renovation going on in London that you could see somebody taking one of these lovely big Georgian doors off and nearly ready to throw it in a skip because there was just a project being done. And you could be walking down the streets and picking up salvage and bringing it back to your own house. And that's how he kind of started things. And then when he moved back home through the mid-90s, he was kind of like, wasn't really sure what he was going to do. The family site was there, but that bug of the world of salvage was kind of there. So we kind of said, look, there might be something here. We have a good site, big warehouse, so there's an opportunity to kind of play into that. And it's not the site that we're at as well. As I said, it's down on the river. It's quite a historic place. Like, it's surrounded by trees. It's not like walking into an industrial premises. You know, it has an aura to it, really. And he basically just started going around auctions initially, because obviously nobody knows who he is. So he's not getting phone calls of people saying, I'll sell you this or I'll sell you that. Started going to auctions, buying up bits and pieces, and basically from there just started growing the stock. And then word of mouth kind of started to spread. It's like back then there wouldn't have been a huge amount of people doing that world of salvage and architectural salvage in particular. There'd have been lots of little people who might have had like a small shed out the back type of thing, you know.
Rodney Trotter.
Not far from, you know. And you know, this was going to be kind of one of the real kind of ones that had the opportunity to be big, and somewhere that someone could come down and spend, you know, an hour of their time, not just 30 seconds to do a quick little loop around and on to the next one. And that's the way he kind of built it, and then flowed into kind of boom times of the Celtic Tiger then, as well as the 2000s came on. So that was obviously a good time, and in terms of people renovating and building.
Yeah, so just to paint the picture then from my mind, the site is on the river. It's where your grandfather purchased originally. The family home was on that site, and there were warehouses on that site. Your grandfather didn't clearly use those warehouses, but they were a throwback from the woolen mills. Is that right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. Oh, I'm picturing big old red brick building with nice square windows and so on. Is it?
Well, it's actually on the warehouses are relatively simple enough, but we have like the massive original chimney stack is still there.
Oh, wow.
It must be 70, 80 foot in height. Like, it's absolutely beautiful. And like, there originally was a lot of those warehouses. There was a big fire back through the 1900s, I think is what it was, that did a lot of damage to the site. But like, my granddad and my granny bought the site because that's where the family home was going to be and everything. But he wasn't running any businesses from there. He purely went down there. This was where he went down to clear his mind and dig a hole and fill the hole and build a wall and knock a wall. You know, it was that kind of place for him. And so that was all done there. And then, Dad kind of said, look, I'm going to go with this idea and kind of take it from there. But like, you know, like anybody setting up a business, there's a lot of risk. Like, we moved home, he had 3 kids. My older brother was 17, I was 7, and then there was my young brother Connor was 4, you know, so he still had 3 kids to come back and, you know, try and get going. And so there's a lot of risk associated with that. But I'm
starting to see a pattern here, Harry.
Yeah, this is it, a little bit. But you know, him and my mom worked extremely hard to get it to where it is today. And, you know, starting off any business is hard, especially when it's not like some businesses, you know, if you want to open up on the high street and you're going to be just selling, you know, a widget, it's easy to just call the wholesaler and you order in 100 widgets, you put them on the shelf, and then now it's down to marketing. In the world of salvage, it's all about the hunting, the buying, the looking for items, and obviously buying them at a good price so you can pass that value on, but obviously make a profit in between. So once the word got out, people just started coming to him. So it could be a pub or a restaurant calling saying, I've just bought a pub and I'm gutting it, or we're shutting down, or we're just renovating. I'm taking out the bar counter, or the old stools are coming out, or the lighting. Is it something you'd be interested in? And then it was like, yeah, we're interested. We'll be on the road. We'll be up to you whatever day next week, and we'll have a look and try and
so he'd jump in the truck with the sons and go and strip it out and
exactly. Go and do it. And like, I remember being young and summer holidays and stuff, going in and working there and jumping in the truck with one of the lads, going doing jobs or deliveries or whatever it was. And essentially the key of that type of business is to build the stock. It's all about having everything and anything. And that's a hard bit, because you're always trying to keep it interesting, but you also have to have the staples. You know, people expect to come in and be able to buy bricks or a timber mantle and things like that. But then you just don't know what else is coming in between. That's what keeps it so interesting for him through those years, and us now. That is the eclectic and weird and wonderful, because you don't know what phone call you're going to get.
When your parents announced that you were moving back to Ireland, was that a big shock for you personally? And did you have any adverse reaction to the news?
Yeah, like, I was 7, so I was probably all right. My younger brother Connor was 4, so kind of immaterial to him. My older brother Paul now, he was 16, 17, it was a shift for him, because like, he had grown up over there and he was coming over here, and I think he went into 5th year, which is hard, you know, when you're trying to make friends at that point. It's hard enough as a 7-year-old, let alone a 17-year-old. But no, he adjusted quite well, and we had family here as well, so there was cousins and stuff all here. It wasn't like we were going to a random county where you had no integration there at all. So there was cousins here around his age, so that definitely helped his side of it. But no, to be honest, they kind of took the view that they loved London. You know, they really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. They had done well. They'd worked hard, like went over with nothing. And, you know, Dad still talks about it, and Mom talks about it as well, where Dad was stacking shelves in Waitrose and Mom was working in Pizza Hut. And that's what they did to get that initial mortgage on that derelict house, as we say, and get going on that. And then, you know, when Dad got into the financial services world, he's a brilliant salesman. Like
okay.
He has a serious skill set on that. And, you know, the market was set up, if you were good, to do well over there, and worked extremely hard. And, you know, we talk about it still, looking back on it, times where it was like, you know, he'd be coming home 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and that's what they did, because that's what paid the bills. So no, like, it was definitely a shift coming home, but for me, I kind of, life becomes quite normal after 6 months of going into primary school. You have new friends and you get on with it. And even, you know, one of my closest friends still now of my old school, like, he was in my class then, you know, so you kind of form new friends for life from that.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to break any family confidences and get into territory that you're not comfortable with. But when your parents and yourselves were moving back to the UK, so obviously your dad was the only one. Excuse me, your dad was the only one who was interested in taking on the site in Kilkenny. Did he have siblings, or was that an easy handover for the family?
Oh yeah, there's siblings and all the other bits there as well. And like, Dad always had just planned to kind of do his own thing. That's kind of what he wanted to go at. And he kind of, I don't know whether he never had a vision particularly of it leading on to us as the next generation. I think he always kind of was like, look, I want to just do something myself. You know, he had worked in a big organization, like he worked in Legal & General, like, which is, you know, it's one of the biggest companies in the world in the insurance and pension industry. So, you know, there was tiers and tiers of structure. So I think he was excited to come home and do that, and just kind of try something himself and see where it would go. And he didn't know, you know, he kind of was taking the mindset, look, I'm going to go at this and we'll see how it pans out. And thankfully enjoyed, like, quite early into it, hit those boom years of the Celtic Tiger. So build things up, but then survived the downturn off of that. And, you know, he will talk about why he survived that is purely because he had built up such a big stock. So he was nearly able to sit on that stock and let it kind of trickle out over the next couple of years, because nobody was spending, you know, it's like, you know, literally lights out, you know.
Yeah. So he didn't. So basically, he inherited the site in Kilkenny. He didn't have to make a big purchase or anything like that. So
exactly, yeah. The site's within the family, so that was there.
Gotcha.
To go at that, and and kind of give you, and which is, you know, a very fortunate position to be in, because especially these days, when you look around and you see the rents of, you know, if you have a substantial site, even a small little shop now. I watch Daft all the time for what's coming up in Kilkenny, and you see some of the rents, and you kind of wonder how do businesses, you have to sell an awful lot of something to be able to just pay the rent and the rates.
Unbelievable. Yeah, and I'm quite sure there are lots of people out there in Kilkenny who would have looked at Mr. Maharaj Senior and said, oh, well, it was easy for you because, you know, there was a premises there and you were able to get going. But nobody sees the graft, the hard work, the pain, the suffering, the sorrow that goes behind it to build up a business like that. So
exactly,
interesting. Yeah. All right. So let's go to school now. And so I presume educated in Kilkenny, and then did the usual thing, get into college in Dublin. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in Kieran's College in Kilkenny. So good hurling school, but I didn't play hurling. But no, great school. And maths was always kind of my thing, maths, physics. And so then when I was kind of finishing up school, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I said, well, look, I may as well do something that's, excuse me, that I'm decent at, and we'll get through it and see what happens. Went to UCD, did mechanical engineering. And yeah, really enjoyed that. And but then funnily enough, and I was only talking about this the other day with someone, I think it was middle of third year, I kind of started going, oh, I don't know if I want to be the pure engineer, you know, the one sitting down, drawing up plans or working on a project. Because there was lads in the class who I could see who loved it. You know, they were obsessed with it. And I was like, I'm good at this, but I don't know if it's what I want to be really doing. And I actually applied to go do the HDIP. I was like, I'm going to apply to do that. I'm going to finish out the engineering degree, and then I'm going to go back and teach maths and physics and applied maths in secondary school. And funnily enough, got rejected. And I kind of looked at it and I was like, what is going on here? Like I had all A's in leaving cert maths, applied maths, physics, had all of that. And then in engineering, I was at the time second in the class in UCD out of a class of 100, so I was like, I'm in a good position here. And they came back and said, no, you don't have the mathematical qualifications to teach leaving cert maths. And I said, and I was like, what do you, so I went back on this and I was like, well, what do you mean? And they said, you don't have enough modules called maths. I was like, as in maths 1, maths 2, maths 3, maths 4, as you go through all of the degree of 4 years or 3 years in an arts degree. And they said, yeah. And I said, well, what do you think computational continuum mechanics is? Or what do you think, fluid mechanics is? I was like, it just doesn't say maths, but it's all heavy, detailed maths based. And ironically, at the time, they said, well, you can appeal the result if you want, but it's like, it was something like 500 or 600 euros to appeal it. But they said, that's non-refundable and we can't guarantee it. And to be fair, my mom at the time said, she was like, look, if you want to go for this, we'll pay for it and you can do it. And I just said, look, we'll just plow on and we'll just see in a couple of years when I finish out the degree what the plan is. And then finished out in UCD. That was 2010. So the world is obviously in a difficult place. And I remember coming out and started doing a bit of work for Dad then because it was summertime. And I was like, look, I'll just be helping away here, but I'm not sure what I'm going to do. And our parents, and this kind of is the timing of this is right as well, where they said, look, we have a family business here. There's an opportunity if you want to come into it, but we think you'll be far better to go off and see the world and just experience it yourself and get a job somewhere else because, just because we have the business doesn't mean you should come and do it. And, I give them huge kudos for that because it'd be very easy for them to say, oh, come on in. Great. There's some cheaper labor as well, and it's on the family and you'll get your dinner in the evening and you can plow into it. And, you have a few brains about you, so you'll hopefully be able to add a bit of value. And the same with my brothers. But they said, no, look, we think you should go and do something else and see where the world takes you. And so that was 2010.
So I'm just interested in this particular notion because and I want to circle back on something as well. But in my case, I was one of 8 children, and the farm wasn't big enough to support us all. So I was encouraged to go and get some off-farm income, maybe because I displayed some different characteristics. Maybe they thought I wasn't ideally suited to run the farm for whatever reason. Was that the case for you as well? Did they see something that they thought was more than running the family business in you, or did they see an adventurous kind of zealot who wanted to go out there and carve his own way in the world?
No, I don't think so. I think it was actually just a very genuine see what happens for yourself. Don't like if I had said on that day when I came out of college, can I come in here and join the business? They'd have said yes, no problem. But so I think it was very much you make the decision yourself. Whereas I think there's lots of family businesses out there. And I know some people working in businesses who went straight in after college or even after school, and it's not what they wanted to do. And they're still there, 15 years later, but they don't enjoy it.
No, it's a remarkable nod to your parents for having that foresight and that open-mindedness to do that. That's remarkable.
No, it is. And it's something, and I've said it to a few people before. It's like, it's something that we're very lucky we did. And like for each of us as well, because we all went and did different things. Like my brother Paul went into the travel industry and like he's literally seen the whole world. Like he basically took the opinion, I'm going to work for a year, make a few bob, quit, go travel for a year, come back, get another job. But every time he did that, the experience he had of being traveling brought more experience to the new job. It wasn't like somebody goes, God, you're chopping and changing jobs. It's like, no, I've added experience because I've been to another 15 countries. So now I can sell that. And then my younger brother, Connor, went into the insurance world as well. So, he learned an awful lot there. So no, I think it was the best thing that happened. And then for me, how I ended up then going into the world of finance, I got a phone call completely randomly. I was actually away with my girlfriend, who's Sinead, who's my wife now, and we were just away, and the usual, whose number is calling me? Either somebody has died or there's something wrong, and you're nearly skeptical. And it was a lady in a recruitment company saying, I found your CV online. There is a role going in Davy Stockbrokers. And I was like, okay, graduate role, graduate program type thing. They said, no, it's a a role that's actually opened up on the institutional equity desk, which would be seen as a very senior position. Now it's obviously a junior entry level role into it. Would you be interested? And I said, of course I'd be interested, but you do know I have a degree in engineering, nothing about business. Like,
yeah. So I've got. I think this is. Hold on now a second. You're getting way ahead of me here, right? So you didn't have any experience in the working world. When I say the working world, you know what I mean. In the corporate world, you didn't have any experience, and you got a phone call out of the blue from a recruiter based on your CV.
Yeah.
And what did you put in your CV? What was on it?
There was nothing major in it. Like I ended up coming, near top of the class in UCD, so that obviously helps, right? But there's lots of people who have good results. I had a couple of random different things on my CV that I'd worked quite a bit in promotions, with the drinks promotions companies during college and during the summer and stuff like that. I had done kind of like tennis coach and things like that. And then, so I think that probably helped that it was like, okay, we obviously have an analytical person, but maybe we have somebody who can talk a little bit. And this was going into a sales role. And then it wasn't really until I got into the interview process and went through the first couple of interviews, which, I kind of did my general entry level HR interview in there, which was fine. There was a few kind of leading business questions, which, was more about the economy and stuff. And I was like, okay, I can answer that. But then I remember, and it's something I'll give to who became my boss at the time, sitting down with him and the head of HR in the company. And like Davies is a big company. So I'm like, I didn't know who they were until I said it to my parents. I was like, oh, I'm going for an interview with Davies. And it was kind of like, oh, Davies,
Yeah. I was going to ask, I mean, what's the bit that attracted you? Was it the Davy stockbroker's name, or was it the institutional equity manager role that kind of excited you? Or were you just kind of chancing your arm?
To be honest, I felt like I was chancing my arm, because I was like, oh, there's no way I'm getting into this. Because like I had friends who had gone and done business, and I was like calling one or two of them going, look, give me the quick lowdown on what the stock market is. And, and I was like, and then to be honest, I kind of came to the point where I was like, I have like 3 days before this interview, I was like, I'm not going to get anywhere on this. And this was before ChatGPT was even there. So you couldn't even give me put it in and get the quick groundworks of what you needed, the fundamentals. And I was in the interview with the main man basically, and they asked, what stock would you pick? If you were going to pick a stock today, what would be the top stock you picked? And I just kind of sat there and I kind of had the moment of, okay, I had something a little bit prepped, and I was like, no, I'm way out of my depth here. And I just said to him, I said, to be honest, I have no stock I can tell you that I'd be able to add any value at all. But if you give me 6 months on the desk, learning, absorbing, pure osmosis, then I'll be able to give you a good run through. And he said to me, well, that's a perfectly fine answer to give, because whatever I said, he was going to probe. This is a man who's
I'm thinking the Wolf of Wall Street, and I'm also thinking, this is the stockbroking equivalent of sell me the pen. So that's what it is.
Yeah. And to be fair, we were there, and the interview went great and whatever else, and then I got offered the job. And I remember coming afterwards and having a chat with him, in the cafeteria, that like a week later, and I said, thanks for having me, blah, blah, blah. You're still very nervous as a 22-year-old going in. And I said, what kind of got me over the line? And he said, look, you had the degree. Great. Good for you. You gave, honest answers. I knew I could trust you, blah, 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 blah. And he said, one of the main reasons I gave you a job is because you worked in promotions. So I knew you would have no problem going up and talking to somebody who you didn't know and been able to initiate a conversation. And I said, well, it's much easier to go and offer someone a free pint of Guinness than it is to try and get them to buy some stocks and shares. And he had a bit of a laugh, but he was like, but it's so funny now when I look back at it, I go, you can get so obsessed with the grades and getting through school and getting the high results and doing this. And then it's a random summer job that I was doing that helped separate, because I'm sure there was lots of people interviewed who had 1 degrees. I mean,
I think there's an incredibly important message here, Harry. The ability to walk up to anybody and introduce yourself and introduce an idea, is that an art that is being lost now?
Yeah, I think, I think it's an art that's probably not appreciated as much as it should be, and been taught earlier to people. Like, I think the schools are definitely missing a click there. Like I've gone back to my old school, Kieran's College, and given a few talks there to kind of the 6th years to just be, there's lots of skills you can pick up here. Obviously, the Leaving Cert is very important. It's what's right in front of you, so you should focus on it. But there's lots of different things that you can go and do. And by picking up a book and reading a biography of XYZ, you can learn a huge amount from it and bring those skill sets to your own life. But yes, I definitely believe that, excuse me, being able to walk up to somebody who you don't necessarily know and have a real conversation with them, it's invaluable, like sales skills as a whole, like that is a sales skill, so sales can kind of get this murky kind of feeling when people say, oh, he's a great sales guy, and you're thinking of the sleazy car salesman or someone who's forcing someone to buy. It's like, it's not that at all. There's huge psychology behind it. There's just huge general life skills that can bring so much to it. You might not sell anything in your life, but if you're a good salesperson, you can do an awful lot. And so I think it's so important.
And how does the modern working world reconcile online working and real life sales skills like what you've just outlined? I mean, how do both of those grow together or symbiotically?
Mm-hmm.
Because living online is an absolute art form in itself.
Yeah.
Selling skills in the person is an absolute art form, and as you just said, highly science-based and so on. So if you were the younger self advising yourself on how to reconcile those two things in your future career, what would you say?
Well, I think when you're doing the online side of it, look, it's very different, right? Because the online, you can take your time, you can build models, you can test. You can test in real person as well to see what works and what doesn't work. What I would say is the younger someone is, the better the chance there is of them getting out and talking to somebody in person. I think that's where it has to start. Like, it can be something as simple as, like, when you're at a wedding and you're sitting down and you're going to kind of that wedding of a friend who you don't really know that many people, and you're like, grand, it's me and my partner, we're sitting down on a table of 10 and we know nobody. There's a skill set to that. It's the exact same thing, but it's actually embracing that and kind of going, I'm going to go up and just talk to somebody random and just have a chat, because you just don't know where the conversation is going to go. So, like, the world has gone online. I'm very glad. Like, there's days where I'm kind of there. I'm like, God, it'd be great if we just had an online business and I could just sit at home on the laptop, not have to deal with anything. But then there's days where somebody comes into the yard and you have a chat with them. You hopefully sell them a few bits, but you actually just have that great connection. Is a strong word, right? Because you're still just selling something. But there is those conversations where you come home and, I'm sitting down with my kids and I was like, God, I met an interesting person today. And, this is what we were talking about. And, those dynamics are priceless, and I think it is getting lost because it's so easy to be online now, especially with what AI is able to do now and how quicker and easier it is for someone to even build a website and test it and whatever else. You don't even have to write the text yourself anymore, so you're not even thinking about what you're putting on the website. And so, like, I think those interpersonal skills are just like what we're doing, where you're just having a chat. And
how much of that is innate personality and how much of it is learned and developed as you grow and as you experience more of the world? In your case, how much of it is innate?
Well, I would think for us, a large part for us, and I've said it before on different times when I've been talking about it, a lot of it comes back down to the dinner table for us. Like, we grew up with dad coming home, talking about his day at work. What did you sell? What did you buy? What was interesting? And that, as a family unit, us just talking, and like, that's pure just osmosis.
That's an immersion, right?
Completely. And then that's even the funny point, even when I'm just saying that now, that it goes back to what I was saying about the South African and Indian life of everyone around having the dinner table and how that transitioned down. And I even have it now with my kids. Like, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, and one of the first things when we sit down at dinner, it's like, oh, how everyone kind of talks about their day, but the kids straight away want to get into, what did you sell today, Daddy?
But
the funny thing is, they don't even want me to say, they want to guess now. So they're like, oh, did you sell some barrels, or did you sell bricks, or did you sell this? And it kind of turns into this bit of a game, but it's all just that.
And all of a sudden they're learning business. They're
just
learning
learning
business
business.
skills.
They're learning how we do it, and they're also just learning to communicate in a different way.
Yeah, and I'm also hearing that they're learning how to ask questions. You know, they're asking open-ended questions. You know, what did you sell today? You know, how
Exactly.
much did you sell, and so on. That's amazing.
You know,
That's
and
amazing. Yeah.
that's something for me. So, like, I would say from our perspective of myself and my brothers, we grew up very much with, you know, having parents who were running their own business and, you know, learning from them, you know, what that meant, but also the other side of it as well. Because like mom and dad were running the business. Mom was more so at home taking care of us in a lot of cases and took on that role, which now when I look back on it, we are so grateful for. You know, at the time, I think a lot of people, if they have, say, a stay-at-home mom, they maybe take it a bit for granted. Sure, mom's there, but it's also your mom who was at your soccer match at the weekend in the blistering rain on a Saturday and all of these things. And then sometimes you got a little bit excited. Oh, dad is at the match. Because it would be once in a while, because he'd usually be working on the weekends, he wouldn't be there. But it's your mother who was always there. So like, there's huge things ingrained in you now when I look back on that as well, thinking about, you know, the sacrifices that, say, she was making to be able to do that for us. And but both of them, like, that's what every family unit figures that out. We were also very fortunate that she was able to do that, and dad was able to generate an income that could afford one person to be able to stay at home. And so yeah, so like I think a lot of those interpersonal skills, the sales skills, would have just come from chatting around the dinner table, growing up with it, and then eventually when we were working summer jobs with either in the yard or our own things, just going for it and taking a little bit of a chance on yourself every now and then.
Yeah, for any aspiring corporate warriors or anybody that's deeply immersed in the corporate world, you ended up with probably one of the most exciting, this is my opinion, most exciting, most adventurous, most out there, most thrilling things that you could do, that one could do in the corporate world. I'm dying to hear about your role in Davies, where it took you, who you met, and the high points. And then I definitely want to hear the low points as well.
Yeah, plenty of them. Well, look, it was unbelievable. So I said that was 2010. And I can still to the day remember when I got like the phone call from HR saying, you've got the job, blah, 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 you'll send over the contract, grand. And I was like, okay, that's grand. And I said, okay, so like I didn't ask any real questions, you know, I was kind of like happy to go with the flow a little bit. And they're like, yeah, look, on the first day, sure, look, you're in for 20 to 7, quarter to 7 in the morning. I was like, sorry, what? Like, in the morning? And they were like, oh yeah, like the morning meeting is at 7 o'clock. Because news will come out for the stock market at 7 o'clock. We'd all the desk goes in for a meeting for about 20 minutes, half an hour, and then you're back out to your desk on the phones and going from there. And like the role I was in, like it's for anyone who's listening that doesn't really know, like there's kind of two aspects of the stock market. You have kind of private clients, which is, you know, you yourself investing a bit of money. You would have somebody who would be your client manager or relationship manager. So that's just Joe Blogs doing what they're doing. And then you'd obviously have like high net worth individuals, you know, wealthy individuals who'd be doing larger sums, but it's still in the private client world. And then you have institutional equities, which is dealing with the big pension funds, the hedge funds of the world, you know, like from an Irish perspective, it's like your Irish Lifes and those kind of names. But we were very much on a global aspect. So it's dealing with, you know, the guys who the books are written about, you know, the guys who beat Wall Street and lost on Wall Street and all of those stories. So no, I went in day one there at whatever it was, quarter to 7, going, oh God. And that was, I think, October. It was actually around this time, actually. It was October time when I started. And like it was dark and I was like, oof, this is already rough and I'm wrecked, you know. And went in the door, and from the second I went in the door, the buzz, like there was just, like you can still feel it. Like the buzz was just unbelievable. Like to go into an office at that time of the morning and people would just be like, let's go, ready on it. No messing, no time for BS, let's go. And instantly it was there, and the boss walked up and he said, welcome, blah blah blah, this is Kieran, who you're sitting beside. Kieran's going to kind of take care of you for the next couple of months. And Kieran ended up being highly valuable for me and amazing for me, and really, really helpful. And then he said, you have 6 months, start learning, but then you better start bringing in some money. And it was like, okay, Well, he's taking the pressure off 6 months anyway, so at least I have that. But it was very much like they're not expecting you. You're not picking up the phone on day one. It's not like you're cold calling there, because it's like you just be ripped apart in 10 seconds. You don't know what you're doing. And like, I have no business degree or anything at this moment. So like, I know zero. I'm kind of like, literally, I need to go back to basics of accounting and all the way through. And it was just, the place was unbelievable in giving me we can say giving you the rope to go with it. And within 2 weeks, I was getting on airplanes and I was going traveling with CEOs of some of the Irish companies, because we would bring a lot of the CEOs and the CFOs and kind of the senior C-suite management to meet all of the investors as well, who we were getting them involved in their stocks. Because the guys who we were getting to buy stocks, it would be like buying 5 million, 10 million euros, 100 million euros and more, depending on the size of the fund. So it's like, it's real money. So the management would be going to meet those investors. Yeah. But very often we would send somebody from the desk to go and chaperone, essentially. So for me, it was like, okay, great. And they're like, yeah, well, look, Harry, you're getting on a plane, you're going to New York for 3 days, and you're going traveling with the CFO of Ryanair. And I'd be like, okay. So what's my deal? And they were like, just go with it,
Yeah. Let's just take a slight step back, and you talk about the desk, you talk about the floor.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the psyche of the type of person that works in there, right? So I'm wondering about I'm interested in the motivations behind it. Are they egotistic motivations for people to be in that world? Are they, they're certainly not altruistic, but are they financial motivations? What motivates people to be on it at 7 o'clock in the morning and going for it? Do they see it as a lifelong pursuit, or do they see it as a period of time in their lives where they need to maximize every minute and then live a happy, relaxed life after that?
All of the above, depending on what day it is and what the stock market is doing, I guess, as well. But
right.
No, like I think there's lots of different personalities on a sales floor. There's the guys who are the aggressive salesmen, who are just go, go, go. And then there's the guy who is just slower pace, calmer, different type of relationships, but also different type of clients. Because like we would have somebody who might be a pension fund, and when they buy a stock, they might own that stock for 10 years. So that person maybe only wants to hear from the Davy salesman once every 2 or 3 months.
Right.
They just want a solid idea that's really grounded, loads of work in it. That's like, this is what, and like we had a big massive research team as well, which is full of analysts who are doing this unbelievable research on the companies. And like we covered all of the Irish companies, we did European companies, but like Irish was the bread and butter. These were companies that we'd IPO'd and brought to the market, and the lads knew everything about them. And you'd have that type of calm salesman who would be dealing with a client like that. But then you would also have the guy who would be dealing with the hedge fund who wants to figure out how can he make 5% this week. What's Ryanair going to be like into results next week? What are we thinking? Where are the numbers? This type of thing. So you have lots of different dynamics, which makes it very interesting as the newbie coming in, because you kind of go, where do I kind of see myself in the the dynamics, how that plays out?
And from a performance point of view, I have a feeling that the 80-20 rule doesn't apply as much in that sales floor scenario as in other sales organizations. So what I mean by that is the aggressive sales people that you talked about, are they producing 80%? Are 20% of them producing 80% of the revenue, or is it more evenly spread across the sales team? Because I have a sense that there's no room for laggards, is there?
No, there's no room for laggards. So you're either very good at the harder side, and you're very good at the longer term view side of things. So it would be very even. You would have guys there. Now it could be choppy for, say, somebody over the space of a month or a 2 month, because maybe somebody who's dealing with kind of the higher velocity clients could be making more sales every day, but they could all be smaller numbers. And then you could have it's a little bit of the it's kind of that dynamic where they might not have sales for a couple of days, but then they get a big one.
Yeah, right.
Bang. It's like, oh,
yeah,
so-and-so has come in and bought 50 million of a stock. And it's like, and now they're appearing on the share, they're taking a position in that company. So it balances out. It's not the type of place that if you're not doing well, you'll be left there, because just even setting up, you know, putting somebody on our desks it's so expensive. Like the opportunity cost is huge. Like I think just the and I'm not sure if you ever seen, like Mayor Bloomberg is the one who obviously set up the company. You have everybody has a Bloomberg computer in front of them and system in front of them with all the share prices and stuff. I think just the entry level cost on that is something like pushing nearly 30,000.
Yes.
So the day I say sat down and you get a login for that, it's like bang, there's 30 grand done.
Yeah, wow.
You know, and it's like, and to be fair, as a general random business point based on what I've heard, is they do not discount depending on how many subscriptions you have. So if you're JP Morgan and you have hundreds of thousands of people on this, you pay the same price as you do you deciding tomorrow I want to get into the stock market.
That's a decent business model, isn't it?
Unbelievable. So you know, it was kind of the place where it was like, you know, if you weren't cutting it, you would be kind of fizzled out quite quickly, but you'd also know, because you wouldn't want to do it. Like it was hard. Like,
and did you see people with heading out the door with their tail between their legs? Did you see people breaking down because they weren't able to make it? Did you see the side of the stock market that we don't generally see from the outside? Yeah,
to be fair, we were very lucky. Like we had when I went in, it was 2010, so the firm had recently had some kind of redundancies and stuff like that through the crash. So I'd say a little bit of that had probably been filtered out before I came in, and even me joining the desk was probably a little bit of a random one, because like only not far before people were being let go. But again, I was coming in nearly in that junior assistance role initially, and so when I kind of got there, the team that were there were pretty much there nearly the whole way through. Like I was there nearly 8 years. There was one or two lads who moved on to go and do different ventures and stuff like that, but it was very much by their own choice. So there was a good close knit team there, and which was great to be able to see, and as I said, see those different personalities. But like for me, the best experience that I ever got from the whole place was being able to go and travel with those CEOs. You know,
so that's class. So we're on a plane and setting the scene here. Are you eye candy? Are you I came across this phrase in one of the first public relations agencies that I ever came across in London in the late 90s, and it was the lady at reception. The name tag on her desk was Director of First Impressions, right? So were you the Director of First Impressions for Davy when you were escorting? Were you a chaperone? Were you a door opener? So what was your role as you headed off overseas?
A lot of different things, and once I started doing it a bit, you realize there was a lot more than just opening the doors. It was like you were representing Davy, so that's obviously a very important point. You're also representing Davy not just with our client, who is, say, the corporate. So let's just use Michael O'Leary as your name. So you're traveling with Michael, who's obviously, you know, a rock star anyway, right? So there's lots of different types of CEOs, but let's put him where he is. But you're also representing Davy in front of the client as well, who's the investor. So there's that whole dynamic there. You're also spending time with them where it's like, you know, you could have 3 or 4 days with this person on the road. So you don't want to bore the life out of them either, you know, because they're like, like we've all done it where you're sitting, like you could be in somewhere like in New York and you're like, grand, we're finished the day of meetings, we have to get out to JFK, which like it's an hour and a half in the car just to get out to JFK, you know. So you're like, there are long periods of time where you're sitting with these people. There's a skill set of knowing when not to be talking as well, when you're just like, they either have a phone call to make or do what they do, or they just want a little bit of time to decompress and whatever. But you also then have the time where you're sitting in that airport and you're maybe just sitting down, having a beer, having a burger before you catch the flight, and just chatting. And, you know, I was very lucky because I was quite young to be on that kind of role. A lot of the other lads would have been, like, I was 22 going in there. I think the nearest age to me was pushing 30, and then the majority of the lads would have been late 30s, 40s. So I think a lot of the corporates probably gave me a little bit more maybe than they would have, because it's like, he's the young lad, I'll give him a bit of time and, you know, share a few stories of the past and stuff that he might not know about. Of, you know,
well, in my experience, they only do that if you are seen to be somebody who is A, interested in them, and B, interested in your craft. And you're absolutely honing a craft here, aren't you? I loved your point about knowing when to shut the F up, you know, because that's a skill that a lot of people don't understand.
No. And then also, well, I tried to take the opinion at the start where I was like, I don't have much value to bring to the table here, so just listen to what these people have to say, and it's like the stories are remarkable, and just how these people go about what they do, but you realize what it takes to become a CEO or a CFO of a company. Like they live and breathe it. Like it's like they might not have founded the company. Some of them obviously did in different ways, depending on what it is. You could be with Kingspan, you could be with one of the Murtas, and that's a family business that's been always there. Or you'd have someone like, Albert Manifold was the CEO of CRH at the time, and he had worked his whole way through, but he was CRH. Cut me in half on CRH. That's what you see, and he just lived and breathed the business. So they love talking about it.
Still there is that. That's an interesting dichotomy, because there is very much a different CEO in a bootstrapped family business, mindset wise, to somebody who has grown up through the business or has assumed a CEO role in a larger business coming from the outside. There's a huge difference. So you've got to manage all of those different personalities.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you have different personalities. Then you also have, excuse me, in that world, you're obviously dealing with, going to say, the company where it's a family-led business or it's a founder-led business. That person has a lot of their net worth tied up in how these meetings go. Like it can really impact it. But then you also have the CEOs of the companies who are the more corporate structures. They're still fully aligned to get the share price up and tell a good story and whatever else. But there is definitely a different dynamic there to manage. But that was what's so exciting.
Yeah. That, because the family, in some senses, doesn't need that meeting to go well, as much as the family business owner, if that makes sense. Yes. So, yeah.
But also on that point, like the corporate world is cutthroat as well. Like, and the world has become even more and more fickle around. Like, there's lots of different types of investors out there, but headlines can drive share prices, and not everybody is a long-term Warren Buffett investor in a stock. So things can turn on CEOs very quickly, which they put an awful lot into it. But like the one thing I always take from it is these guys just work hard. Like, they are relentless. This is what they do. This is what they love. And people might give out about pay packages and this and that, but like they also are in charge of a big company with a lot of employees, and they need to get things right. And they put the effort in. And like anything, if they're not good, they won't last long.
In my experience in the corporate world, when you're out traveling and so on, people say, wow, that's such an amazing life. What they don't see is that you are absolutely on it from 4 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock the next morning. And yes, you do go for your beers and so on, but it's all work. And so what are the bits that you loved? And I'm presuming that these guys don't really need to be on the piss when they're away, right?
No. I like that's not I was never that person. There are people who enjoy that side of it, where it's like going out and having the night. Like, that was never really my thing. I had a bit of fun in college, happy days, we all do, and on nights out. But for me, I actually, the corporates, no interest in doing that. They just want to, we'll go out for a nice dinner, you do what you do, have a good chat, and then it's like, right, see you tomorrow morning, we'll be ready to go. But as you transition and do that a lot, like, and we did a lot of traveling on our own as well, where you'd be just going meeting your own clients and stuff like that. And hotel rooms become a blur at some point as well when you're traveling a lot. Like, I think over my first year, I think I was on 120, 130 flights just in the first year alone, and then that kind of stayed steady for 6-7 years. So it's an awful lot of traveling. And now, I didn't have kids or anything at the time, so it was great. But I also did look around the desk and look at some of my colleagues who did have kids, and they're doing the same amount of traveling as I am. And you're kind of, that's where it eventually you kind of have to weigh that up. And it goes back to your point earlier, are people in it for a short-term or a long-term career? It's that role, I think, is a very hard one to do on the long-term basis. There are people who do it, and kudos to them. But for me, I kind of, after about 7 years of it, I was kind of like, okay, do I want to be here for another 7? Can I do this? And I'm at that point where I'm getting married, kids are going to come on the radar, hopefully, and all of that type of thing. So that's when you kind of start to see that shift happening.
Yeah, and I have a sense at this stage in your career that what I would describe as a quiet murmuring starts to become more pervasive in your daily thinking and so on, and you're starting to look to the next phase, look to the next 15, 20 years, whatever it is,
Yeah.
and you're starting to ask questions, right? And a lot of the time, again, in my experience, these questions are values driven questions. So it's not about, the next move to make a whole lot more money or to get an extra house or whatever it is. The questions that are asked are values based, and I hope that makes sense. And
Yeah,
is that what your experience is also?
Yeah, 100%. It's starting to, eventually you have to weigh things up. You can put a monetary value on pretty much anything. So, where I am now, and say I've obviously, we can talk about it in a bit more detail on making the decision. What's the value of sitting at home and having dinner with your kids versus being on an airplane and stuck somewhere else on the other side of the world? If you want to be on the other side of the world, there's maybe other issues as well, that you don't want to be at home with your family. But that wasn't who I was. So you can kind of start weighing that up and making those decisions, and eventually, the scale starts to go the other way, and the buzz isn't worth it. It's not worth as much as it was.
Man, this is rich gold territory here, Harry, because all of a sudden you're right back to the dinner table with the family.
Yeah,
all those years ago, right?
Yeah,
and that helped to create that value set that you're now living by.
Yeah.
30, 20 years later.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
Holy shit.
Full circle.
So what else, what other values? What are the key other things in your life that are your drivers?
Like, I'm a pretty driven person. Like, I've always, I wouldn't say like my friends would joke, yeah, you were always after money and this and that, but that's because I worked in that world. So it kind of became, it was the end goal of what you were trying to do, because if you weren't making money, then you wouldn't be in the job. Whereas, like, for me, I love the challenge of trying something new, but since leaving, no, even to be honest, even going all the way back through college and stuff like that. And I was only talking about this with my wife the other day, where it was like, I love deep diving on some stuff and being like, so when I was in college, it was like, that's what I'm focused on. That's what I'm going for. Like, even during college, like, a lot of friends were applying for all of these graduate programs, like the big ones, like with the consultancy firms or the accountancy firms or whatever it is. But like, those graduate programs take up a huge amount of interviews and applications and all that. I was like, no, just focus on the results, study, do what you're going to do. And then when it was in Davies, it was like, I'm all in. I was like, I'm just going for this. And in the early years, I didn't have in my head I was going to move home to the business, but in the later years, I knew there was an opportunity. So therefore, now it's like positioning myself so that I can afford to move home and, buy a house in Kilkenny and go into a family business. Because at the time, the business, like when I made the move, the business wasn't able to take us on, and my brothers all joined as well. We all joined within 12 months and none of us had a conversation together to say, I'm going to leave what I'm doing and move home to the business. It all happened completely independently. But we all knew that if you're coming home, you're going to have to make this work to be able to sustain. And so like those kind of decisions of weighing up what do you want in life, I think came very important to me. And that's a hard one as well, because you have to sacrifice some things. But at the time, I was like I had no kids, but I knew kids were going to be on the radar, and it was going to be very important for myself and my wife Sinead. Touch wood, we were going to be lucky enough to go down that path. And I knew that what I was doing wasn't going to be a sustainable way to be, let's call it, a good dad.
Yeah. Well,
sorry, that's the wrong word even to say a good dad. To be a present dad, I think that's more important.
Yeah. Actually. So what you're describing now is what I would call, well, it's introspection, right? But it's also looking forward. It's looking inwards to look forward. One aspect of your previous life that I just would like to cover off briefly is you're a high tempo guy living in a high tempo world. Is it all high tempo, or were there dark moments of the soul when you really had to ask yourself some really hard questions, or did those conversations only enter your mind when you were starting to look to the next phase?
When I was in the middle of, like, when it was fun, And to be honest, there's no like day where it was like, oh, I just don't want to do this anymore. But eventually it becomes hard to get up for that red eye flight. And you're not excited to get on like the flight to get over to London for the day or whatever it is to go do a day's worth of meetings. And you're like, now when you get into it, you're like, it's grand, it's good, it's whatever. But when the alarm goes off or whatever, 4:30 in the morning, and you're just like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this? But then there would be people on my desk who had been doing it for 20 years who still loved it. They just loved it. And I was like I was never massively passionate about the stock market. It was never like, I loved the sales side of it. I just loved that. And actually what I kind of leaned into very heavily in our world was finding new clients. There'd be times where, you know, if you're there long enough and say somebody leaves and you might inherit a few clients and, you know, they've been trading with you forever. So it's kind of relatively easy. You just have to make sure you don't mess up the relationship. But I never really got the buzz out of that. I'd get more of a buzz out of getting one new medium-sized client who came on and traded, and you know, you'd hear the call of the name, so and so is traded, and people go, "Is that? Where are they from?"
Yeah,
and you'd be like, "Yeah, that was mine."
Ring the bell. And this is
last week or wherever, you know.
Yeah, this is an important point for aspiring salespeople, because some salespeople really thrive or get off on the quick one-time sale, you know, very short lead time. Let's get in, get it done, and move on. Whereas other people, as you described earlier, they're maybe the more less high tempo people, perhaps, who really thrive on the more consultative selling approach, the longer lead time sale, the work that it goes into building up the relationship with the client and so on. So which side of the fence are you, or were you on? And I have a feeling that there might be a relation to that and the type of sales that you're in today.
Yeah, which is funny. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, I'm definitely on that long-term relationship side. And the prime example is now, like literally only about 3 weeks ago, we had somebody come into the yard, and it was an older gentleman with his daughter who was in her 30s, you know, similar age to me. And he came in and she was doing a new build house. And once we started chatting, he said, "Oh no, I came in here 27 years ago, within the first month or two of your dad setting up the business, when we were doing up our family home at the time. And now he's coming in with his daughter, who's doing her home, picking up stuff from me, the next generation of our family business." Like that's as humbling a moment as there is to be like, no, we have something real here. You know, like, you know, and Dad wasn't even there on the day, and I was gutted. Now they've been in, and that's like, Dad knows the man, but it was the first time he had come in with the next generation on his side. So that's how we're thinking about the business, because, you know, people are maybe doing up a home and they go through phases where they're like heavy, and then you might not see them for 5 years. And you'd be like, oh, that's so-and-so, and they'll come in, and they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, look, we finished on that project, and we're going. But like, to have a generational sales process is remarkable, you know.
Yeah, wow.
On that, you know.
Yeah, so in order to get there, you had to go through your exit process from Davies, right? Yes. And for a lot of people, that might just be today I've decided to leave, and tomorrow I'm leaving. Whereas it sounds like yours was a well-planned, well-structured, executed exit.
Yeah.
I want to touch on how different people manage their exits from the corporate world, because some people like you do it in a very upfront and well-planned way, and other people are quite dark about the art of an exit. And I hope that's putting it politely, right? So talk to us about that.
Yeah, so like, look, the timing was kind of lining up for me where I'm thinking about it, and kind of, you know, the business at home, the family business, Dad was very happy where it was. It was him, he had one other employee, and they were kind of, you know, I'll never say just tapping away, but they were very happy. They were doing what they were doing, and the business was grand. It was paying the bills, and we had all grown up at that point. So he's like, you know, the major costs of having kids and all that is all done, and we've gone through college. We're all running our own lives, and I was like, okay, well, look, there's an opportunity here maybe to come home. My wife is from Kilkenny as well, so that obviously makes it an easier move. It wasn't trying to persuade one of us to leave home or anything like that. We were both getting closer to home, but the business wasn't ready for it. So it was kind of, what can we do before I even move home? And that was just obviously going home, working at weekends, starting to build an online presence. Social media, obviously, at the time was getting bigger. Like, we barely had a functioning website, say 8-9 years ago. Like, there was nothing there. It was just about a website. And it was like, okay, so what opportunities are there in it? Started to kind of grow that in the background and working hard at the weekends. And there was a period where it was like I was going into work in the stock market from, say, 7 until 6:30, 7 o'clock at night, and then going home, having some dinner, having a shower, and then turning on the laptop and doing work for Dad from 8 o'clock until 11, to just get stuff done there and try and grow the business. And then the time came where it was like, okay, I'm ready to make this move now. And I wasn't, I don't like to say I wasn't enjoying it at the end, but I was looking forward more to doing the work for Kilkenny Architectural Salvage than I was going into the stock market world. And I was like, again, back to that point about the scales, it kind of shifted. And I was like, that's where the next buzz for me is going to be. And that's where I'm going to get the most utility out of it. Knowing that I'm obviously taking a step away from the corporate world and the pension and the salary and the security and all of that type of thing. And the little bit of the glitz and glam of it as well,
and the camaraderie and all
there
that
was
stuff.
a huge thing in that, So, and then it was a case of, it was time to make the move. And it goes back to that point. It's I mentioned earlier, the man who was my boss at the time and said, there's Kieran, that's who you're sitting beside, and he's going to take care of you and be your kind of mentor for the first while. Kieran ended up becoming the head of the sales desk, and popped him the message, just on our instant message type thing, and said, have you got 2 minutes? And like anybody who's probably a boss who's received that message knows there's something up. They're either looking for more money and they're going to come in bargaining, or they're leaving. So we walk in the door and he straight away goes, he says, "You're leaving, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, Kieran, I am." And he said, "Are you going to a competitor?" Because that's obviously a big thing in our world. Like, if you're going to a competitor, you kind of exit straight away, goodbye, like away from the computers and the systems. And I said, "No, I'm not." And I said, "I'm going home to the family to try and grow the family business." And he just put his hand straight out and shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, I'm absolutely over the moon for you." And
wow.
And as a boss, I will always give him that, to be like, it takes an awful lot for someone to do that, because they're it's a cutthroat industry and whatever else. And he said, "No, I'm delighted for you." And we sat down and we ended up chatting for about an hour and a half. So this 2-minute conversation turned into an hour and a half in this little office room, chatting about what I was going to do, what I thought I could do, where things could go. And then jokingly at the end of it, he kind of goes, "Oh, wait, I need to just check, is there anything I can do to keep you to stay?" Even though I know there's not. And he said, "I have to ask, I officially have to ask that." And I said, "No, look, there's nothing." I was like, we're ready to go.
Yeah, I'm seeing that there are people in your life, or you probably attracted people to your life who wish the best for you, who knows when not to hold on. So I'm thinking about your parents and encouraging to go off and see the world. Thinking about your boss, Kieran, who, for absolutely the right reasons, encourage you to go and do your thing. So, would you say you're a person who has attracted that type of person into your life, or were they just lucky enough to have encountered you?
A bit of both, probably. I think, you get lucky at times to meet some interesting people, but if you kind of bring a certain mindset yourself and how you act and, your own morals and how you go about your day-to-day life, those people stay around if they're the right type of person. So yeah, definitely very lucky. But from our perspective, the influence our parents have had on us it's huge. And we still have it to this day. We're still working in the business, together. So I'm there every day with my dad. Mom comes in and does Saturdays now because it's just so busy as well. She's been doing that nearly since we came back. It started getting so much busier. She's in on a Saturday to kind of do the meet and greet with people and all of that side of it. So there's days where we're all there. So look, I've met some great people and I've learned a lot from, getting to travel with some of those senior people. But at the end of the day, the people you spend the majority of your time with have massive influences on you. And, I was only talking about it recently with my wife, Sinead, and it was kind of, around that dynamic of what would our life have been like if we had stayed there. And it was kind of like, God, it wouldn't be a patch on what we have now. And she's actually just recently, she's been at home taking care of her kids and for the last number of years, but she's going and launching her own company now as well, you know, so she's kind of even getting that bug as well to go out and to do something. So, you know, it's kind of that dynamic is great.
For all those people who are listening and who are sitting at their desk in the corporate world, and I know there are some of them who are quiet quitting, who are wondering, how can I milk this for as long as I possibly can before I get out of it to do what I really want to do? And I know I'm being a little underhand, but I'm going to continue it anyway because I feel that the corporation owes me something, or I believe that the world owes me something. So what's your advice to those people?
Like the quiet quitting is lethal. Now, as a business owner, it would break my heart to know that one of my staff was doing it. It would kill you.
Well, that's the answer, yeah.
No, it is. But it's like, look, to be fair, and I'll be very straight on the way I was, like when I left Davy, I was making as much for them as I was the whole way through. Like I didn't have, like you couldn't afford to have this big dip in the numbers you were bringing in because it'd be just so obvious. So like I was busting my ass still while trying to do the other bit on the side in the evenings or at the weekends. What I would say to somebody is eventually a point comes where, yes, you can keep plowing on and getting the paycheck month to month from wherever you are, and you might be working on something in the background. What you're working in the background will never get the jump or the bump or the attention it needs when you're still somewhere else 9 to 5. It'll never happen. Like, you know, I thought we had done some good things to the business while working on a Saturday or a few hours on a Sunday for it. When you get down there and you live and breathe it, it just pales in comparison to what you were doing by scratching the surface of doing a few hours here and there. So like what I'd say to someone is, you want to be, look, don't make a silly mistake, you know, like don't just quit and you have nothing lined up and you don't have any cash in the bank to be able to take care of you, or if you're in the middle of a mortgage process or whatever, like, you know, you have to be clever and about how you go about things, but at the same time, bet on yourself. Like there's nothing better than betting on yourself. Eventually you will regret it if you don't. And like there's times when I sit here now and I kind of go, God, if I'd left 2 years earlier, would we be 4 or 5 years ahead? Because I'd have had those, just even, you know, you can compound that time frame so massively when you're all in, but things fall into place for a reason, timing, all of that happens. So I'd say be clever about it. You know, if it is something that someone is looking to do and going out and trying something themselves, you know, like it's very easy to move jobs these days, right? People move jobs. It's just a norm, you know, and that's a very different game. You know, you can play very clever games in terms of getting salary bumps and working up scales and a new title. And if you go to a new job every 2 years or whatever it is, that's different. If you're going out and betting on yourself, there is a lot of risk associated with it because there's nobody standing behind you to make sure that you get paid at the end of the month. And if you're doing it just you as a solopreneur, okay, it's on you. But as soon as you start taking on staff, the dynamic just, it just changes. Like, and I've read, like, I'm a big reader on all of the old business books and the biographies, and I love that. And when you hear the guys saying, you know, God, things were bad, and I was taking out, you know, very American-esque, I was taking out the credit card and paying payroll using the credit card and all of this. I was like, those feelings are real. Like,
yeah, I've often had the contention. I've always had the contention that you don't know what it's like to be self-employed until you've had to sweat the paycheck on a Friday evening, sweat the payroll on a Friday evening. You know, once you hit that point, you know you're self-employed, right?
Yeah, 100%. And like, there's something also very freeing in that. Like, I love that we have employees and we are helping them do what they do in their lives and doing everything we can to provide a good, enjoyable place for them to work and where they can learn and grow and everything like that as well. So there's an awful lot from that. But like, when you work for yourself and you get to go home in the evening and go, yeah, that was a good day. That was great. Yeah, you know, I got an awful lot from that. You know, this like, what euro value do you put on that, you know?
Yeah, you're moving forward. That is an amazing feeling. Yeah. So we're all in it together now. We're in Kilkenny. We're in the architectural salvage yard.
Yeah.
And there's 3 brothers and parents and whatever other family members are involved. Our business is going well. Give us a brief overview of the actual business itself and I'm particularly interested in the family working dynamics. So what are the good bits and what are the hard bits?
Yeah, so like that basically, I come out and it's like August, whatever, 2019. So 6 months later, we walk into COVID. So that
Lovely,
was so that was great to have. I had my first child 2 weeks before lockdown as well. So we were literally into the depths of it. So look, when we came down, the business was there. It was doing what it was doing, but as I said, it wasn't fully sustainable to be able to like fund multiple households. So it was like, we know what we need to do here. We need to grow this, but we need to just do that ourselves. You know, we don't have the bandwidth to bring on 2 or 3 employees to be able to do it. So like we were packing boxes, wrapping pallets, out on the road, dusting stuff down, doing what it was, and you just had to grind it out. But it was trying to grow that online initially. And thankfully we had, because our business as a salvage yard, lots of people think of it as the place where, it's a couple of old lads kicking around a bit of metal. They nearly think scrapyard, which it's not. It's like building materials, garden furniture, timber beams, flooring, pub memorabilia, antiques, lighting, everything you can think of, all the way up to, like, as I say, the most weird and wonderful. Like, we've had confession boxes come in and out, things like that, which that's the beauty of it. So, but it's still a very traditional business where people came down and walked around a yard. So it was like, how do we transition that online so that somebody in Sligo can go click, click, click and buy a cast iron bench from us, or a timber floor, or whatever it is, or just an old little coffee table, So it was trying to get that dynamic right. And then we obviously all walked into COVID and didn't know what way that was going to play out. But thankfully, we survived that, got through it. We had built up the social media at that point as well. So we had a bit of momentum in it, which was going to make a big difference, because our world is so visual. Like, I have an endless amount of content, thankfully. If you just sell baths, you can only take so many pictures of a bath, that people go, we know you sell baths, happy days, good for you, type of thing. Whereas each day I have something new to be able to put up, to post, to show off, which keeps it so interesting and continuously evolving for us, as well as for the person who's standing there, sitting on the couch on their phone, scrolling, and they go, oh, what's that? And they scroll back, and then whether they buy or not, I don't really get too stressed about whether they buy it at the instant. All I really care about is they go, that place looks interesting. And they turn to their partner and go, or they pop a message to their parents and go, I found something for us to go do next Saturday. And they get in the car and they come down to us. And like, now a Saturday for us is a hectic day, but we will have people getting in their car for 2.5-hour drive each way to come and see us. Like, they arrive and they go, oh, we've come from Clonakilty. And you're like, oh my God, like, it's,
and that's all driven from the online presence.
It's driven from the online presence. And then people also can see there's a bit of size to the place, and they're kind of like, okay, look, we're getting something out. We're not going to rock up. And as you said, it's the Trotter independent trading little garage out the back where there's nothing to see and you're done in 20 seconds. It's like, you can come down, you can spend half an hour walking around, do a couple of laps and enjoy it. But we also position it in a way where we're not heavy-handed salespeople walking around with them. It's not that feeling of, when you get to the car lot and you're like, oh, here comes the salesman and he's on me and now I have to like talk through cars. I just want to walk and look. And that person is doing his job because that's how their world is done. Whereas we just want people to walk, enjoy, not knowing what they might find. And so you're building a connection with them. Yeah, completely. And when they have the question, they'll come to us, and then that's where our skill set will hopefully come in. But with that mindset, back to that point earlier about thinking, how do we ensure that this person wants to come back to us for the next 20 years? That's how we do think about it, because we always have something that person might need. It could literally be all the way to the simplest. They could be in doing up their whole house and, they're spending good money. They might come back in 3 years later after a storm because they're just looking for a few ridge caps.
Yeah. Do you see it? Do you see trends? When I think of architectural salvage, I remember over the years railway sleepers being a trend. I remember church pews being a trend. Yeah. Are they still trends, or is there something new that's taking over now?
Yeah, it's always changing. Like, the church pews are definitely there. Actually, I have one leaving the yard today. I saw it just going out there, and it's going up to a coffee shop. literally, actually, ironically, just around the corner from on Delir Street from my old homes.
No way.
Dawson Street. And, you know, they're going to be putting that in. And it's, you know, so like things come and go. Our job is just to make sure we have a bit of everything. Like we don't want to, like, look, summer periods, there's lots of garden stuff. We ramp up on that. That's just part of it. That's obviously just a natural thing to do. But we don't know what's going out each day, just like we don't know what's coming in. Because like we could get a phone call tomorrow. We had a great one literally probably about 6 weeks ago. We got a phone call to go into a pub that had been closed for 70 years. Nobody had been in it for 70 years.
Ah, stop it.
Like it had been in a family. They had all left. There'd been nobody in the country. It was just down this little country lane. And the doors were closed. Like there was pint glasses still on the table.
No.
Yeah. Like with dust, literally the doors were closed. And that was it. So we got to go in here and it was just like, oh my God. Now, a lot of the stuff had gone a bit beyond, unfortunately.
You didn't find an old Bugatti in the corner.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. That's where it goes, flipping back to your point about Del Boy and Rodney and Trotters. You have the moment of what could we find as well. That dynamic is always there. But, you know, that's just unbelievable to go in there. And then, like, another time we were, like, it was probably about a year and a half ago, we were in a hotel that, again, had been shut down for years. And it was just like going into this hotel and like some of the beds were still made and everything. It was just, you have a moment of like, not many people get to do this as their day to day. And then you fill up the van and you head off and you have the moment of like, you know, yep, there you go. Yeah. There's a bit of value in the back of that van and we're heading off. And then the hard bit starts because now you have to sell the stuff. That's what pays the business. It's easy to spend money. You know, we could go out. There is so much stuff out there. Like it's relentless. Every day people are messaging us with stuff to sell and we have to obviously pick and choose jobs. So the buying is the easy bit in terms of the volume of it out there. Obviously we have to buy at the right price because you can overpay for something and it's going to sit in your yard for a long time because you won't, you know, you have to make a margin. Whereas like if we can buy at a good price, pass that on, we are a volume business. We're not an antique store, you know, so we're not that shop where you walk in and there's nothing with the price tag below $4,000 and, you know, the person is happy to just have stuff sit there because it is a one-off piece. You know, we have those pieces and we play into that, but we do see ourselves in the volume world where it's like, get it in, put a good price on it in terms of good prices in value for the customer. We make a few bob, we pay our bills. What's next? Just keep going because space is always a constraint for you. But in terms of your question on trends, there are trends that kind of come in and out, but we deal with such an eclectic mix of customers as well that it kind of balances out. So our job is just to keep it interesting.
Yeah. How is the family dynamic? And not that these two questions are related, but how is the family dynamic and what are the absolute biggest challenges that you've got in the business?
Yeah, so
and personally, you know, personally related to the business.
Yeah. So like from the family dynamic, obviously that's something you always have to be aware of because things can blow up and it's the last thing you want. We still want to at Christmas time be able to all sit down around the Christmas table again, back to that point, and be a family. We've managed that very well. We all have our own skill sets and we've all kind of slotted into those, and everyone kind of does different types of jobs, and we know where somebody is stronger and maybe where somebody is weaker, and you kind of do that. But we also are all humble enough to know that if the floor needs to be swept, who's beside the sweeping brush? Sweep the floor. Like it's not a case of, oh, you know, I just did a big deal there earlier on, you know,
not my job. Yeah,
not my job, or hand it on. So it's like, you know, you just go and you just do that. And so we manage that. And look, there's days you want to kill each other, and then there's days where it's like, this is the greatest thing in the world. But I actually had a customer come in, that was probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and literally said he'd been in a family business and with his brother, and he said with his brother, I said, like, how did you manage that? He worked with his brother for like 35 years or something, and he said, if we had a blow up, it had to be settled on the day. Don't go home. And he said for 2 reasons. He said, one, the blow up is between you and your brother. If you go home, it transitions to the partners. And now there's another dynamic of it. Who's always going to stand up for you as their husband or their wife or whatever? Of course they are. They're not actually going to do that unless you're really out of line and they're like, no, you're wrong on this one. And he made the point, he said, have the blow up, storm off, do whatever you're going to do. But when it's lock up time, go on, hug it out. If that's as simple as a thing where you don't actually even acknowledge that you had the blow up, give the handshake, give the hug, or just go, look, I think we were both a bit off there, or I was out of line, or look, I think you were off on this one, I'll be off on the next one. Let's start again fresh tomorrow.
And is the biggest challenge in that family dynamic, is it making sure that everybody shares the same vision for the business? Is that the biggest thing that you need to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think you all have to be pushing in the same direction, but also open to someone else's interpretation of what that could be, or a new idea. Like, new ideas is the hardest bit, I think, in terms of a family business, because when you run a, if you're a big, massive conglomerate, new ideas take a long time to filter their way through. We can be quite quick and act and try something new. But also you might be like, I don't know about that one. But then you also kind of, like, if one of my brothers has an idea, you're like, I don't know. But then you kind of go, well, if I don't try that one, he's probably going to veto my next one. So, you have to have a little bit of give or take and try it. And once you're not risking the house, and we're relatively conservative people, I would think we are in our approach. And again, that's coming from our parents. They wouldn't be bet the house type of entrepreneurs. It's do it right. And like, we've always taken the opinion since we've come in, we're not carrying any debt. And if it takes me a little longer to get to where we are, but I don't have the bank manager calling me, then that's fine. The debt can get you there a little bit quicker. And I come from a world where leverage is everything, in the stock market. It's how you get returns. Whereas now I'm kind of the mindset, no, I go home and, I don't have that risk, because the world can turn very quickly. And it's so volatile now as well, like obviously in the Trump world, and, even budgets yesterday and everything like that. And you're trying to manage all of that, that dynamic, it's not easy to run a business, but if you don't have a big debt number sitting on top of you, it's a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah. In all of that little segment, have you covered off the biggest challenges, or is there something else?
No, I think the biggest challenge for us is when you're a business of a certain size, I think you're kind of caught in an area where you're like, I'd love to take on 2 or 3 more employees, but that's going to bring on overheads. But I could get an awful lot done, but do I really want the overheads? Can I just get there as we're doing it, or is there a more efficient way? I think that's the biggest challenge where we are now, where we've grown, and we've grown significantly from where the business was, say, 7 or 8 years ago when we came on. But it's like, what's the next double? What do we have to, do to be able to double the business? How many risky decisions do I have to make? Or, they can be analytically biased and decisions made on that. It's not just flipping a coin and seeing what will happen. That's the last thing I would ever do. But it's also, you still want to be growing. We're young. We can still take on a bit more risk in whatever ways we want to do it. But I also don't want to bet the house, because I've made that decision that for me personally, and I think for the rest of the family as well, is going home and knowing that life is good and family are good, everyone's happy, healthy, the business is doing what it's doing. Like, it ticks an awful lot of boxes for me. And that's not saying, I'm not ambitious and going for it. The ambition is there and the drive is there, and working hard hours and long hours is still what it is. But it's trying to do it in a long-term view, and being like, how do I build this with my brothers? Touch wood, my parents are going to be around for a very long time still. They're in their late 60s, early 70s, so there's still plenty there, and plenty to go. Like, my dad plays racquetball twice a week and indoor football still as well, with a lot of 40-year-olds, like, and he's turning 70 in February. So, there's plenty of passion and ambition there still with him.
Yeah.
Me and the brothers, it's how do we're not looking, because we're not like a techie company or something, we're not looking to build something to flip it. It's not in 5 years get a payday. It's like, how do we build this in a way that we can have a business that we all enjoy going into? We still get a buzz, we'll have staff, and we get all the benefits of that. But how do we have a business that's still there again? Like, we're now coming up on 28 years now in a couple of months in business, which any business is remarkable. But how do we do another 28?
Yeah. I got a cryptic question for you.
Okay.
What business are you actually in? Right. I remember listening to a lecture by the then CEO of the McDonald's Corporation, and I've told this story before, but he asked the question, what business is McDonald's in? Is it, some people said it was a fast food business, some people said it was a customer service business, some people said it was a food business, whatever. But he said, no, it's actually a real estate business. Yeah. Because McDonald's purchased real estate, they put a restaurant on it, the real estate appreciates in value. they just happen to sell hamburgers to fund that investment, right? So are you actually in the architectural salvage business, or are you in a different business?
Yeah, we are. We're in the searching for salvage business. And the basis of reason I say that is, and this, I'll give this to, I'm robbing it from my father, Robin. If you have good stock, they'll keep coming.
Right. Love it. Love it. That's very focused. That's really focused. Yeah.
They'll like, if you're the place that people go, they always have something interesting. They always have the thing that I didn't know I was looking for, but I went home with it. And now that is exactly what I wanted. You know, like the amount of people who come into us and it's like, oh, is it your first time here? And they go, yeah, or I'm back again. And they're like, oh, look, we're not looking to buy anything today. We're just looking for inspiration.
Yeah, so you're definitely selling inspiration. You're definitely selling solutions. You're definitely selling. You could get wanky about all of that stuff, but I like what you said. Yeah, you're in the business of providing architectural artifacts. Yeah,
and just finding items, and when we find them and put them on the shelves or in the yards, the right person will walk in on any given day to buy that item. It might not be tomorrow. It might be in a couple of months. We have to build a business that allows us to keep running until the right people come in and pay the bill, and pay the overheads. But that person always comes in. It's just a question of when. Yeah.
At the heart of this podcast and the heart of this story that we've been listening to today, well, certainly the mission around Just Getting Started is about people who have achieved a lot in their lives to date, but they feel that they have a lot more to give. They feel like they have a lot more energy. They feel like they've got a lot more value to offer to the world. It sounds to me like you are just getting started. It sounds to me like you're at the beginning, even though you're 6 years in, you're at the beginning of another wave. Where do you think that wave is likely to take you? What do you want to achieve over the next 15 to 20, aside from the business goals that you've already prescribed? What other things do you want to achieve? And do you have a feeling like you're just getting started?
Oh yeah, definitely. And like, it's been a roller coaster, more so probably from maybe my perspective than say the other brothers, because neither of them have kids yet. So I've had kind of that 5-6 year period where it's like, you want to go all in on the business, but you have a family dynamic as well. And like, you mentioned earlier on as well, with kids, so like, it's hard. It's really hard. Yeah. And like, I joke, like with a lot of my college friends now, we nearly all have kids and we've been very lucky. And you kind of sitting down having a drink and everyone kind of goes, yeah, it's hard. And it's that's what I found. And it's like, and I love it. And I love every minute of it. But I also know that I'm at the phase where I'm like, that gets a lot of my attention and my time, and sleep is deprived. So I know you're not running on full cylinders and been able to drive it, because that's the dynamic. Like, well, for me anyway, not everybody. I go to work and I do what I do so that I can hopefully provide for them and for at home and all of that. But like, we are definitely only getting started. Like, the opportunities that are there for us, the market from the business perspective is huge, because it's only going one way. People are becoming more aware of what they're buying, the circular economy, reusing items, moving away from, the fast fashion, the fast furniture, the stuff that if it gets a chip, you realize, oh, it's actually only a piece of plywood. It's not wood. Whereas like, you chip a nice piece of a coffee table that's a solid timber table, you just sand it off and away you go. And that table has been around 50 years. It has another 50 in it. So that opportunity is definitely there for us. I'm excited on what we can do just as a business together. See, we've got it to a point now where it's like you have a little bit of firepower, so you can kind of go, what's the next step that actually is like a step change versus just this getting better every year, doing what you're doing. It's like, okay, so now how do we, and that's where we are very much thinking now at the moment. And, our Christmas end of year chat where we'll all sit around the table and go over the year and the plan for next year. It's like, okay, so how do we make that next step change, a real step change for the business? But for me, it's very much doing that while managing that dynamic of being at home and being able to be available and present and around my kids. My kids won't be 5 and 3 again. Like, you don't get that again. And the people who say, oh, it's great and whatever, it's like, yeah, but like, live it as well. Like, that's worth an awful lot. Like, I personally made that decision to leave that world of chasing the corporate world for that. and now I get to do something I thoroughly love every single day. But I get home, I'd say in 6-7 years, I've missed dinner 10 times.
Yeah.
And some of that's been away at a stag or a wedding or whatever it is. It's not led by work, you know, and that brings a hard thing as well, because there's times where I might be sitting in the yard and it's 5:30 or 5:15, and I'm like, we've locked up, and I'm like, God, if I stayed here for an hour now, I'd get an awful lot done because it's quiet. There's nobody here. I can close the door and put the head down. And I go, no, I'm going home. We're going to have dinner, and I can do that this evening at 8 o'clock when the kids are gone to bed. And that's to me, that's worth an awful lot. But look, the kids will get older, and that just happens. And then that will free up some more time to be able to lean into the business even more, and go. But it's, for me, it's managing that dynamic all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So let's, how old are you now?
37.
37. So let's fast forward 40 years, right? You're 77. How will Harry Maharaj know that he has provided the most value that he could possibly provide in this world that he's just lived for 77 years?
Yeah, that's a good one. Well, look, do you know what? I'm actually going to, I'm going to use the copy of what my parents have done very much. So if I'm sitting there, my dad is turning 70 next year, and then mom is in her late 60s. If I'm sitting in a similar situation to where they are, where my kids have all grown up, they've turned into decent human beings, you've had some fun yourself running your business, but also not given up everything, your health or anything like that, to make the business, you know, anyone can have a huge business, but they sacrifice an awful lot of their health or their mental well-being or whatever it is. And thankfully, you know, not that I've heard of anyway, my parents have kind of got through it with tough times, but they've got through it in terms of running the business and the family. If I'm sitting there at that point in my 70s and my kids have grown up, they're happy, healthy, maybe they're running a salvage yard, maybe they're not, I don't know, but I will 100% be following the blueprint of what my parents did in terms of go do what you want to do. And if, touch wood, there's a business there that you want to come into, you're more than welcome to. But if you want to travel the world, if you want to be a musician, if you want to work in the corporate world, go for it. And what happens to the business then, who knows? But it did what it was meant to do. And at the end of the day, anyone who runs a business, if it's your own business, the pure reason is for it to give you a margin, to give you a return so that you can pay your bills, have the freedom of what you want to do. So if you want to go on a holiday, you can go on that holiday. And there'll be years where you won't get to go on a holiday because the business just went to shit. And that's the way the world is. And you have to take that on the chin, and then in the good times, enjoy it. And so if I'm sitting there in 30, 40 years and that's the situation I'm in, I'll be very happy.
Well, what a story. That's a remarkable story, and it's been a remarkably enjoyable couple of hours. It really has. And I think for anybody listening and anybody that's wondering about how to move on to the next phase of their lives, whether that's get out of the corporate world where they are today, or whether it's to finally start that business that's been quietly murmuring inside them for too many years, I think your story is truly inspirational, Harry, and I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to it. So thanks very much for joining us today on the show.
No, thanks for having me on, Nick. It was great. And we went around in a lot of different areas there, which was great to go on a bit of a deep dive on some of the history. Yeah. It was brilliant.
It was terrific. So look forward to catching up again. I'm going to turn off the record button and just catch you for a second on the other side. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Nicky.